Karen tries to scam me for a free Subway sandwich by saying I didn't give her change. Here's a Subway story for you all. Today a woman came in with her teenage daughter. I said hello and asked if I could help them. The daughter asks for the bathroom code so she can wash her hands, while Karen stands in the line looking at her phone. More people come in and Karen is still on her phone. The conversation is happening while people are lining up behind her. Karen finally deigns to talk to me.
What's the sub of the day?
I say, roasted chicken.
That's not what the sign says. It says either chicken teriyaki, ham, turkey, or…
And I cut her off. The sub of the day changes every day, and since today is Tuesday, it's roasted chicken. The daughter comes back and stands with her.
Oh, well that's shady advertising. Whatever. I'll get 2 6-inches of that. Just keep the meat off my daughter's side as she's a vegetarian.
I ask the daughter if she wants me to make her sandwich first so I don't touch the meat and then her veggies. She says please and tells me what kind of bread she wants. I make it really quick and she asks about a garlic sauce we have. She ended up liking it and wanting it for her sandwich. Then Karen chimes in.
I want that for my sandwich too, and chipotle and mayo.
Okay, what kind of bread would you like? This is where Karen turns into a mega thunder punt.
I was just about to ask what kind of bread you guys have, but apparently you can't keep your mouth shut.
I should mention that talkback of any kind to customers is a big no-no at Subway. The last person that did it, and man, I love her for it, got a write-up and her hours cut to 4 hours a week for 2 whole weeks. At our Subway, we don't have the right to refuse service, so I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I really thought about snapping back, but I needed the job at the moment." Karen threw her hands in the air and interrupted,
"Stop wasting my time. What kind of breads do you have?"
I told her, and after she just told me to keep my mouth shut, she picks. I go to put the garlic sauce on first.
I changed my mind. Just the other 2.
She got a smug smirk on her face. I really wanted to wipe it off.
Get another piece of bread.
So I do, and then she asks about the chipotle steak. I tell her, I'm so sorry, but we don't have steak at the moment.
Why is it on the board if you don't have it? This is just ridiculous. Don't go promising things to people if you don't have them.
The teen grabs her mum's arm because by now the line was to the door and everyone was looking at her. She told her mum to stop.
No, I'm not going to be lied to like this.
The daughter cut her off and said, "This is why I live with Dad. Just take me home." The daughter walked outside. Karen looked at me, then the people behind her. She just asked for her sandwich to be wrapped up. She threw down a 20 and walked out with her 2 sandwiches, looking down. Good tip at least. Okay, update. She came in today alone with a big smile on her face. She ordered the sub of the day and told the manager I didn't give her change, so this sandwich was free. Ha! Nope. I already told my manager about her, and the manager said any change she left on the counter was considered a tip. The manager smiled and said, I've actually already heard from my employee and a customer what happened yesterday. You're not getting a free sandwich. Also, the daughter's hair was a dark blue. You could tell she just did it. I'm sure it teed off the mother to no end. What a piece of work that woman was. I do not envy you having to just stand and take it, and from the daughter's reaction it sounds like this happened all the time. It may also go some way to explain why the parents are no longer together. I know that there are Kens who do this too, and luckily they and the Karens often seem to find each other and at least inflict the majority of their venom on each other rather than the stuff the rest of us get on the unfortunate occasions when they do leave their grottos in search of food. I don't understand how you can be like this to service people and constantly try to score free stuff off local businesses and still see yourself as a good or worthwhile person in life. If this lady doesn't try and change, she's not going to be seeing her daughter much when she grows up and is no longer obligated to spend a certain amount of time with her under the rules of joint custody. Will Karen learn her lesson and place an appropriate amount of blame on herself? My money is on no. The author is a champ, as is her manager this one time for supporting her. Now, let's just get Karen banned from the subway for when she inevitably tries to come in while the manager is away to score some kind of revenge victory. Today I messed up by getting fired because I cried. Okay, so this happened about 2 hours ago. First of all, a little backstory. I'm a 25-year-old male who lives in Iran, which is a very crappy country to live or be born in. Everything here sucks and is incredibly hard, including finding a job. I've been unemployed since COVID hit my country, and just recently, I managed to finally find a job. COVID is still raging here since they won't vaccinate us, so most times we work from home. I was dating this girl for about 9 months, which I know isn't a long time, but since I'm leaving the country in a few months forever, I really invested myself into this relationship because we planned to leave together, and everything was going so smoothly. My anxiety was practically gone, and I was really happy after a really long life of being depressed. Yesterday, out of nowhere, she breaks up with me and tells me that she isn't feeling the relationship anymore and that I'm a really good guy and she doesn't want to hurt my feelings in the long run, which destroys me, but I do understand. I tell her to give us another chance, and she says no, it's better this way. She's a very honest person, so I believe her and leave. I accept the outcome even though I immediately start crying. Anyway, today I was still pretty bummed out, but I had to go to the office for a couple of hours. My boss is there to help me, which is a big relief since I really don't feel like working. I take a smoke break and immediately get reminded of some memories, and I start crying a little bit. I go back upstairs and my boss immediately finds out that I've been crying and insists on me telling him what happened, which I do. It's not that common for guys to be emotional here. We've been raised to oppress our, quote, feminine feelings. He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Wow, you're crying over that? Such a weak person. I don't think you're a good fit for the company if that's the stuff you're worried about. I think you should leave." At this point, I start laughing, because this is clearly just a joke, right? Wrong. He looked at me like I'm insane and asked me to leave immediately, so I pack my stuff and do as I'm told. Yesterday, I had a girlfriend whom I loved and a job and a good future ahead of me. Now I'm just a guy who has to leave this country and everyone he loves because he was born in one of the worst places possible, and he's doing it completely alone and broken. Honestly, maybe boys shouldn't cry. In short, my girlfriend broke up with me. I opened up to my boss, and he thought I was weak, so he fired me. I don't think any reasonable person could say that this was on you, pal. Tears don't make us weak, they're just a sign of pain. I remember the most devastating breakup of my life. Gosh, those moments where you're just commuting home or on a break and the overwhelming sadness hits you are rough. Constantly going from being completely fine to barely holding a straight face with tears in the corner of your eyes is just a raw deal for anyone. And I live in a country where I couldn't get fired for it. I've checked up on your profile, and while I couldn't specifically find if your move worked out, you seem to be alive and well. You have to be commended on persevering through your truly rough situation, and in case anyone was wondering, the jerk here is clearly the boss. Imagine seeing one of your employees at their absolute lowest and just thinking to yourself, what could I do to make this person's situation just that bit crappier? Best of luck, author. I hope you find some more happiness and stability down the line. Never lose your emotional honesty. It's fine to cry. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. New travel policy to save money ends up costing so much more. My company was on a cost-saving kick and decided to look for a way to shave pennies. Now, they could have looked at the amount of money that was squandered by people jetting all over the country on company time at a huge hourly rate. Basically, the labor spend is always much higher than the cost of the flight, car hire, hotel, and food combined. Or they could have looked at the number of strategizing away days that HR went on. But no, they came for the lowly engineers. When the company starts counting paperclips, you know you're about to have some fun. We were called to a consultation session. Read, "We're telling you what we've decided based on what we think goes on and not what actually goes on." The session was about saving money on hire cars. In our company, if you have to go away from your home site, you can use your own car and choose a mileage rate up to about a 40-mile journey. If it's longer, then you should have a hire car. Hire cars are usually dropped off at the office by a transporter, or you can pick one up at a hire office, or you can get it dropped off at home for a small fee, £14 plus fuel. Travel department announced that there were going to be no more drop-offs to save money. The engineers knew how this was going to pan out, and we said nothing. The thing to know here about the travel department is that they don't travel. None of their knowledge is from the real world. Travel announced that the new policy was that home drop-offs were to cease, and we had to pick up the hire car at the office or at the nearest Hertz rental location. Sounds simple. All the engineers who travel a lot could instantly see the issues, but as we were told, this is the new policy that we had to comply with. So we did. Maliciously. I was on a job 300 miles away at the customer site. I traveled down on the Monday morning, starting at 6 a.m., and back up on Thursday, home at about 6 p.m. Because of the travel time, I got the Friday off. I also lived a 100-mile round trip from the office, and my nearest Hertz office was at the airport. This was not an unusual situation. A lot of people I worked with traveled to client locations. The weekend arrived. Usually at some point over the weekend, a car is dropped off and the key and paperwork is popped through my letterbox for the princely sum of £14 and no time from me. Instead, because the Hertz office was closed at 6 a.m. on the Monday morning, I picked up the car the day before. Because my wife needed my car while I was away and therefore couldn't leave my car parked at the airport, I took a taxi as per company travel policy, £35 and 40 minutes. I picked up the car, which took about 30 minutes, and I drove home, which took another 30. On the Thursday evening, instead of heading home and getting the car picked up on the Friday, I headed straight to the airport, dropped off the car and took a taxi back. £40 and another 40 minutes due to busy traffic. Our expenses are done monthly, so by the end of the month I have 3 weeks travel to account for, which would have been just 3 times the £14 plus a small refueling charge for the trip back to the Hertz office. Instead, they got about £200 for taxi fares and an overtime bill of about 4.5 hours at £80 per hour. And I wasn't the only one. Some engineers took a taxi into the office to pick up the car, as their spouse needed the car while they were away as well, wink wink, and then some took a taxi to the nearest Hertz office like I did. All of us put in our overtime at the end of the month. Travel has no overtime budget, so it all got claimed from the project. The project labor budget teams went ballistic and went all flaming torches and pitchforks on the travel department. The policy didn't last the day after the end of month's reports. Yeah, this is really one of those stories that could have been avoided by literally just asking for input for the people whose work you'd be affecting the most. Seems like the entire engineering team in question knew exactly what was going to happen. More to the point, the author's expenses were likely reflected in the rest of the team's actions as well, so a policy that was meant to save maybe a couple of £100 at most would have ended up costing thousands. And the author and co got paid overtime into the bargain. So they win, and hopefully the heads of the company knew not to just take everything the travel department said as truth in the future. You know, in the last few videos here, it's been really hammered home to me that the business organizations are truly just as capable of colossal wastes of money as the government-run ones that they're often compared to. Big brain moves like this seem to happen a lot in the stories we get submitted here, and I'm beginning to think that this kind of thing isn't the exception. I got told, "No parking outside my house, that's my space," on a public road. And then a punctured tire led to a year of long, petty revenge. There was a bloke who lived over the road from me. He had a little "no parking" sign in his front window. Keep in mind this was a UK public road and plenty of places to park. The guy just wanted his space. No one living at his place was disabled, so the, quote, need to have his space was just simply that he didn't like having to walk a car's length away. Screw that guy. So I parked in front of his house because, you know, it's a public fricking road. He comes out and goes ballistic. That's his space and "you'd better move it or else." I refused. Next morning, the front tire has been stabbed. Fair enough, I can't prove it's him. But it definitely was him, so revenge time. I bought an old Ford Fiesta for £300. This was back in 1990. It was a complete shed and genuinely had 14 owners before me. But it had a Ministry of Transportation certificate. In the UK, every year your car needs to go through a series of tests at a certification location. Read inspection garage. Just to ensure that it's roadworthy. I think new cars, 3 years old, are exempt. The car needs to be MOT'd to have valid insurance. The certification lasts 12 months. So this car had that, and I'd taxed and insured it for virtually no money. I waited for his wife to move their car from, quote, their space, and I parked that bad boy right outside his house on the public road. Again, the bloke comes out and goes crazy. I just smile and say, "Enjoy." The police came around a few times, but I just showed them the MOT and insurance documents, I also told them the story of Mr. No Parking sign. They laughed and left me in peace. If someone reports a car as abandoned, they'll come around and put a notice on it, and you, as the owner, can then reply to the notice to say it isn't abandoned. And that's what I did. I'm sure the rules and laws have changed since then. It was 30 years ago. I left that wreck outside his place for a full fricking year. Tires got stabbed, windows broken, it even got spray painted, and kids were playing in it, which enraged the bloke even more, and I just left it. Called the scrapyard with a day left on the MOT, and I laughed myself silly every day. Yeah, how's your little parking sign working out for you now, you moron? And by the way, I was going to put another junker there. In fact, we moved a few months after the first car got taken to the scrapyard, but I still considered repeating the process even though I didn't live in the area. I, in the end, decided to spend my cash on something else instead, but it was an option. I mean, you have a certain level of petty malicious jerkiness yourself there, mate, but at least it was directed at someone who was indeed a much bigger jerk than you. Honestly, you're another jerk vigilante. If you're going to inflict it all on a completely out-of-line and territorial idiot like this who's willing to vandalize someone else's property for an imagined parking space that he had no legal claim to, then just go ahead. I'm only slightly concerned about how much of your time and money you put into your revenge scheme. The fact that you were on the fence about whether to buy a second junker car just to make this man's life a misery says that maybe you should find a hobby or something outside of torturing him, but again, I'm not your supervisor. If you think that making a Ken angry is the best use of your limited time here, then I'm not going to stop you. In any case, good for a laugh, thanks for that. Our landlord told me, "Go ahead, call the city inspector." So I did. This happened in 2018. I'd just moved to a new apartment. It was a 3-bedroom, first-floor apartment and it had a finished basement. It had 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen on the first floor. It also had a nice bedroom with a full bath in the basement and a bar and gaming area. It was also in a very nice area of the city. The apartment was owned by a corporation. Honestly, we loved that apartment until it kept having recurring issues in the basement. The carpet was wet from time to time. At first, the landlord would send a cleaner to come and handle it, but it kept happening. I asked them to check and fix the issue, and they didn't do it. I told him I'd call the city inspector to check the building, and they laughed at me and told me, "Go ahead, call the city inspector." So I did. I called the city twice until I was finally connected to the right department, and they sent an inspector a week later. The inspector found so many building violations. They told me they'd contact the building owner and would come again. The next day, the owner called and begged me to tell them what I know about the problem with the apartment. I told them that I sent complaints multiple times and they should check their record. The city inspector, the owner, and the property manager came 2 weeks after that, and the city inspector was giving them an earful. He laid it to them and it was bad. They had to deal with structural and foundational issues and some safety issues too. There were 4 tenants in that building, including us. Imagine it was a big colonial multifamily home divided into 4 apartments. They had to break the lease with all of us to fix the building. They couldn't fix it with us being there. We were ready and had already consulted a lawyer, and we told them that 1. We wanted our deposit back before moving out, 2. They paid for all of our moving expenses, and 3. They paid for our deposit at the next place. They couldn't kick us out and they couldn't rent the apartment after the inspections. There were 4 of us and we could all sue them for placing us in a dangerous building. In the end, they spent so much money to relocate us and fix the apartment. To clarify some stuff, 1. The other tenants received money and some compensation from the landlord too. They also got their moving costs covered as well. I didn't make them homeless, some of them thanked me. 2. We moved to a new neighborhood that was only 5 minutes walk to my office. It was a single-family house. We loved that neighborhood. It was so LGBTQ friendly. We stayed there for a year until we bought our first house. The rent was actually cheaper than the house. 3. The building was owned by a corporation, so when I say landlord, it refers to the owner and property manager. I hope they learned their lesson. Excellent. It's nice when doing exactly what these jerks sarcastically tell you to do gets massive consequences for the party that's wronging you. And it seems like you got a whole bunch of the usual expenses of moving essentially negated by reporting these violations to the city. So let's recap. They sarcastically told you to take a course of action that A. broke your lease and got your deposit back, a feat that many of us struggle to achieve even with a decent flat, and B, meant that they paid you extra, and C, finally resulted in them being legally obligated to fix the problem. I mean, what did they think was holding you back from taking this option that only positively affected you, and why did they bring it up in such a sarcastic manner? They were very cocky. So yes, as is most often the case, the landlord and soulless corporation was the villain, and in this case basically pointed our protagonist in the exact direction that would get them exactly what they were asking for and cause the company a whole bunch of damages into the bargain. Spectacular. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.